the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you are answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
Okay, so good Friday afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Immigration Legal Guidance for International Sustainability Professionals. I am Pam Samarco, CEO of Green Training Associates and the Program Manager for Building Green Workforce Bridges Career Program. And we welcome Dr. Sarkar's students. He's the founding director of the MS in Sustainability Management degree program. So today's program is focused on the international students who are seeking guidance on immigration and how to work through the job application process and internship application. And we're here to support them. And we've invited the Chugh LLP law firm with attorney and partner Mr. Min Kim and attorney and partner Ms. Mishita Jethi as our presenters today. We have a brief agenda. We'll hear from both attorneys and have them do an introduction for themselves, as well as have a Chugh law firm overview. And then we'll go around the room and have the students introduce themselves, your name, your academic major, internship or entry-level job seeker, where you are in your process in terms of what you're seeking, and your country of origin. We'll then have Min and Mishita give an overview of the immigration for business professionals, just some general guidance, and offer some additional support in their experience and their journeys into this country. And now they're helping others in the students, especially at Stevens, value and appreciate the guidance that Min and Mishita will give today. And we have some submitted student questions that are on a slide later. We'll go over those together so that Min and Mishita can answer some of the most commonly asked questions. And we'll open the floor for students in the room to invite them to ask their questions. And of course, finally, we'll have the opportunity to get some contact information from Francesca, who is at the final slide. I have her contact information for you. If you have an interest in engaging Min and Mishita's services or Chugh Law Firm services generally for your personal individual guidance, we are also able to provide you with the contact information at the end of today's program, so that if you have questions or you would like direct private consulting services, that's available as well. So and then we'll open the floor, have discussion, and any questions that are remaining. We will have an hour for today's program. So allow me to turn it to Min and Mishita for their introductions and a law firm overview. Min?
Thanks, Pam. It's thank you for the warm welcome, and it's a pleasure, just being invited once again along with Mishita to speak with the students at Stevens. And I know that we kind of launched this engagement between our organizations, I believe starting last year, and it's an honor, and it's truly humbling to be invited once again. I take it that the feedback last year was somewhat positive, hopefully, and
Very positive.
Right, and that's the reason why we were asked to perhaps attend, and it's always a privilege to be speaking with a diverse range of students, no matter where he or she might be during their academic journey here in the U.S. Perhaps they might be on the precipice of graduating and then making future career plans for themselves and their families. So we understand that there's a diverse range of questions. Kind of depending upon where a particular Stevens student might be in his or her journey. So we look forward to perhaps answering those issues and kind of commenting on that. I suppose for myself, I've been practicing immigration law for I guess close to 15 years now. As Pam just kindly introduced me, I'm a partner and an immigration attorney here at the Chugh Law Practice, along with Mishita. I currently sit in our law firm's Edison, New Jersey office. Even though I've been practicing law for about 15 years, I've been in the industry for close to 20. And then I quickly found out that immigration is something that I want to do for the rest of my life. So I went to law school and decided to make this my career and profession. I consider my area of expertise, advising employers and foreign nationals, whether it be students or perhaps individuals who might be a little further on in their professional career regarding immigration issues. The interplay between business immigration, family immigration, and just overall federal government compliance. I suppose speaking about compliance, just making sure that foreign nationals, visitors here in the U.S. do everything that they have within their control to ensure that they don't risk or jeopardize their continued lawful stay here in the U.S. So hopefully we'll be able to get into a lot of those aspects later on in today's discussion.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And we're delighted to welcome you, Min. Mishita, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Pam. Thank you again. I echo everything that Min said. I do appreciate that we've been, invited back again, and it's such a pleasure to speak with you and with all of the students in Dr. Sarkar's program. And we're here to assist, with any questions that this cohort may have today and even further if needed. I am an immigration attorney and I'm one of the partners at Chugh LLP. I sit out of both the Edison office as well as the New York office. I have now been practicing for a little over 8 years. I exclusively practice business immigration law. I assist and counsel companies in in hiring and retaining talent, foreign national talent, and I assist them with both the temporary H-1B and other programs, as well as the permanent residency program. And I think that the thing that drew me into immigration, one was obviously my own personal journey. I moved to the United States a little over 10 years, almost 11 years ago as a student myself, and then went through most of these stages myself. And I think that, just understanding and going through the process myself brings that extra layer of not just empathy, but also understanding, right? And I like to translate that with all the counsel and all the advice and the strategies that I bring to the employers as well as the employees, because sometimes we find that it's harder to understand the employee's perspective, the foreign national perspective, without having gone through the process, ourselves. So I do try to bring in that element when we engage with the employers. And yes, once again, very happy to be here, and we look forward to this discussion.
Such an important topic, and it's critical things that services that you offer, and the advisement today is so much appreciated. So welcome again to Min and Mishita. Let's go around and do a quick round of student introductions. Again, your name, your academic major, what your status is, intern or entry level, and then what country of origin. Who'd like to start with the introductions? Okay, Mihir, go ahead.
I am currently a second semester student in Masters in Sustainability Management, and I have done my bachelor's in chemical engineering back in India. I am from Gujarat, India, and I am currently applying for summer internships, and I am planning to pursue my career in sustainability manager role in next few years.
Thanks, Mihir. Who'd like to go next?
Christy, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Christy. I'm currently a senior at Stevens Institute of Technology, and I'm majoring in business and technology with concentrations in environmental science and information systems. And I'll be pursuing the master's and program in sustainability management next year. As for internships or entry-level jobs, I'm currently interviewing for a sustainability internship, and that occurred earlier this week. And earlier today, actually, I interviewed for a sustainability specialist position, which is a full-time entry-level job.
Wonderful. Thanks, Christy. And what's your country of origin?
Oh, I'm from the USA.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks. And let's see. About Tanvi.
I don't
Did
think
she
there's
drop?
anyone else. Yeah, because in the participants, I actually only see
Yeah, I thought
the
Tanvi
6.
joined. Okay, maybe she dropped. Okay, Yadi, go ahead as a final introduction. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not a student. Hi. I am the program coordinator for the grant management programs, and I work with students in the MBA program, AMBA, EMBA, MSTM, which is the Masters in Management and Technology, and the Executive MBA. I also work with students in Enterprise Project Management. We do have a large population in the MBA program of students that are from India. So this sounds like it's something that I will get a lot of information from, and maybe I can bring back to the students or invite them to join the next time that.
Hear from the attorneys about an overview of immigration legal guidance, given the state of things today in the world, and also what your knowledge and journey is. And then we'll I'll go back to the deck and we'll look at the student questions. So Mishita, who would like to get started with just the overview piece today?
Go ahead, Min.
Okay. Right. So I mean, kind of like what I mentioned before, like we understand, depending upon, what class you're in, it appears, Christy is, kind of interviewing for entry level roles, while Mahir, I believe I heard you correctly, Mahir, you're a second year student. So we understand that, those milestones and those pathways are a little different. So we try to, be, kind of like general, but not overly general. We do want, we do want you folks to have some takeaway, practical, things to kind of apply to as you kind of finish up your studies there. I mean, what we want to target today's, hour specifically with, though, is perhaps some pointers on when you meet with prospective employers, whether it be for an internship or perhaps, a position, a full-time position coming out of Stevens, um, like how to be forthright in letting them know that this is where you are in terms of your immigration status, whether it be, you're a US citizen or a permanent resident or perhaps a foreign national here on a temporary visa. A lot of times, depending upon the employer and the industry, the responses to those things and how you characterize it, it's gonna influence them, that company, that employer, in their decision making. Um, I think the one common theme, though, is, I think this goes without saying. I don't think anyone needs to be reminded of it. It's always good to be forthright and honest. We don't want to mischaracterize or misconstrue or perhaps lead the hiring employer any kind of, incorrect pathway. Um, if you think that a certain response is going to put you at a disadvantage compared to someone who might have been born here in the United States. Well, if that's the case, then perhaps that company, that employer is not for you. If they're going to be so hardline in their stance and how they view a certain part of their population versus another part of their employee population. So it's good to be forthright, candid, but there's also, there's a certain line or threshold that, yet you don't have to cross. You don't have to volunteer any kind of specific information if you're not being requested. So it's a matter of kind of knowing that boundary, knowing, yeah, I mean, if a hiring employer happens to ask me this particular question, then I can answer it in this fashion, and hopefully that'll kind of paint me in a favorable light in the evaluation process if I were to be offered such a position. But yeah, I mean, trying to be mindful of the compliant reasons behind it, but also trying to make sure that we build up your candidacy so that those interviews requests will come right one after the other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Min. I think it's important, when you start your journey in looking for employers. And I think, Mihir, you said you're first year, right? You just finished, yeah. You're finishing your first year, so you're looking at summer internships, and I think these are important stepping stones, because you hope that these internships get converted to full-time offers, and obviously you're going to put in a lot of thought in finding the right mix because you want to work there full-time. So don't consider your absence of a U.S. citizenship or permanent residency as a disadvantage or as a hurdle. It's just one more thing that you have to account for. That's the that's the framework in which I would put it, because a lot of times what may happen is you've got that perfect job, that perfect manager, everything, but perhaps during the conversation you realize, oh, either this company has maybe a small budget for immigration, or maybe it's non-existent, or maybe they don't have the right combination of people who may advocate for someone who was, who requires sponsorship. And at the end of the year that you worked for them, maybe on your OPT, or perhaps at the end of your 2 years at STEM, you don't want then to be in a situation where you suddenly find out that, oh, not only will this company not sponsor me, now it's too late for me to really go and look for other options, because more than likely another employer would have wanted you to work for them for about a year or two before they decide whether or not to sponsor you. So I think, when you decide, when you're looking for employers, and as Min rightly said, you don't have to volunteer that information, but in your research, and today, a lot of these things are already available on the internet and through other colleagues of yours who may have worked in these companies, try and figure out, what are the hiring practices, right? And if you really find a company that's, that perfect fit, but perhaps either they haven't done the sponsorship for a foreign national, at some point, a little bit maybe early on in your journey, try and get a sense of how receptive are they. Maybe the only reason they have never sponsored a foreign national is because it just never came up. Nobody who required work sponsorship worked there, or maybe nobody brought it to their attention, and maybe the company will be receptive, and maybe they just needed someone to, bring it to their attention, and they might work with you. And that we've seen that a lot with smaller companies or startups. And sometimes I've spoken to managers who say, oh, I had no idea. I thought that once you have the OPT and the STEM, then the employee can just continue working and that can be renewed. But I'm open. I really like this person. And that's where, your skills and everything that you bring in addition to this one thing where you require sponsorship comes in. Because if you're a great employee, if you're someone who fits the mold perfectly for the employer, I'm sure most employers will do whatever it takes to keep you. And if that then requires them to sponsor, the immigration aspect of it, I'm sure there'll be a conversation. And like Min said, if it's not true, let's say if the company at the end of it says, what, this is just, it's not possible, we can't do it, then yeah, perhaps that's not the company for you, and then you look for alternate options. So that's how I'd approach it, whether you're looking for an entry-level position or you're looking for a more, experienced hire. get some information and make your skills and the value that you bring to the company so good, make yourself such a great fit that the employers have no other option but to say, you know, we'll do whatever it takes to keep this person on board.
Right. That's always the best response. And I know that we have a list of questions as Pam kind of mentioned before that we want to get to, that we want to make some time for. But you know, perhaps just to kind of add to what Mishita was saying, um, like I don't know, like, you know, like for me personally, I would think that, you know, asking immigration attorneys like myself and Mishita to speak with you, you know, hopefully you really take advantage of the, you know, the short time that we have, because a lot of times, you know, in addition to counseling foreign national workers or foreign national students if they happen to be in school, you know, obviously most of our time is preoccupied in kind of advising those companies that Mishita was referring to. So, I mean, I wouldn't quite characterize it as like insider knowledge, but we kind of know how these companies think and operate. You know, like what dollar figures drive their decision making in kind of opening up the hiring pool. What kind of attributes and characteristics do they look for in a potentially, you know, qualified, you know, worker, whether that worker comes from a U.S. origin or perhaps from overseas. Um, and you know, I take it that like one of the reasons why Stevens and Pam specifically, I mean, asked us to you know, to speak again here today is to kind of share with you what little tidbits that we've been able to acquire in our years of practice. Like, you know, a lot of times, you know, companies in this industry, you know, these are the things that, you know, perhaps are important to them. You know, if they are somewhat aware of immigration issues, because, you know, a lot of companies, as Mishita referred to, they're just ignorant. I mean, you know, they've like, I suppose up until now they've only hired U.S. workers, not intentionally, not purposefully. It just happened to work out like that. And, you know, hiring foreign nationals and, you know, agreeing to visa sponsorship, all these are foreign to them. But, you know, kind of removing those types of companies, if they are somewhat familiar with immigration issues and they have a history of hiring, you know, foreign nationals to join their organizations, there are certain, you know, things, whether it be related to compliance, whether it be related to best practices that, you know, their respective attorneys advise them to adhere to, or whether it be just entirely driven by, you know, profit and loss decisions. And it's just, you know, a lot of times they're in the business of making money, and you know, the you know, those money factors, they kind of drive their uh, their course in this fashion over that fashion. So you know, hopefully from today's talk, we'll be able to kind of impart some of those you know, little small life lessons that we've been able to kind of glean or the years of advising, you know, such, you know, similar companies. And if that helps you in kind of building up your resume and having a little bit more, you know, confidence as you speak with these prospective employers that you're looking to kind of plug yourself into, then, you know, I suppose our time will be definitely well spent then. Should we go to the questions now?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you both, because those words of wisdom are exactly why we're here. So the little pearls of knowledge that you have about positioning, how the employer is thinking about it, what questions do the students ask when they're in the interview, what are the clues in even job descriptions and postings and on the company website that will inform them that they are, you know, sponsorship friendly, if you will. And the opportunity for the students to learn these things from you is essential. I think also, you know, one of the things that I say to the students is the fact that you're bilingual. If you've got a grasp of multiple languages, you've got the an upper edge, which that language skill has value to companies, especially if they're global and they have business in your country, your home country, and the relationships and doing business in different languages, I think is a great advantage as well. So, you know, let me pull up that in terms of what the offering is, what are the strengths. And so, you know, we're grateful for that idea, those ideas. So here's the questions. These are not in any particular order. So these were from our students last year, and I kept them because they were all relevant and important. So Min and Mishita, take it away. Do you want to, and you could call out the numbers by which you're going to answer, or if you just want to generally speak to them, and I'll ask the students to write in the chat if you've got some burning question or one of these is more important. What we'll do is we'll spend maybe 20 minutes or so, or 25 minutes, and then we'll take any live questions for the last 5 or 10 minutes, and then our program will close. So let's dive into the questions. Where would you like to begin?
Mishita, did you want to talk about being location agnostic? Yeah, I know that's a
I'm
copyrighted
going
term by you. So
yeah, I'm going to almost now. I'm going to file an intellectual property thing on it very soon. Now that we've used it for 2 years in a row. Yeah, I think it goes along with everything that I'd said earlier. Is that when you are looking for jobs, please make sure that you scan pretty much all of the country, and you make yourself location agnostic. You make it known to potential employers that you're willing to relocate, and you're not just available in one place. And that is a very good segue to what Pam said. Sometimes companies find it very relevant and helpful when they're interviewing to know that you're bilingual, and perhaps in addition to the United States, you have work authorization somewhere else, maybe where the company has operations, or maybe looking to grow their business. And if you say, well, I would like to continue working in the US, but in addition to that, I can also work someplace else, and I already have authorization to work elsewhere. Make yourself a candidate which really fits all of their needs, or is able to say, I'm willing to relocate. And that, in addition to opening avenues to getting hired right now, I'm sure Min will explain later how it also allows you to qualify for other kinds of visa categories. So let's say you work for a company in the United States for a year or two, and then for whatever reason, the company is either not able to sponsor you at the moment, but they have operations in Mexico, or somewhere in Europe, maybe South Asia. And you make yourself be the candidate who says, what, I'll be okay with taking up a job there with the company's subsidiary or an affiliate. And after a while, you could come back here on one of the other visa categories, even within the United States. Don't restrict your job search just to a particular coast or a city. Just tell them you're available to work any place. And the first 3 years, this is assuming a lot of students are on qualify for STEM extension. The first 3 years, really, the employers don't have a lot of compliance issues. They don't have to do too much, right? There's very minimal employer inside or requirements, so to speak. In that time, if you can look for employers outside of your immediate surroundings, maybe there's another place or a city where employers are more sponsorship friendly. So do all of that. Definitely make sure that you don't restrict yourself to just one city or one industry. As Min earlier pointed out, there are certain industries, just because of the nature of their hiring process or their hiring history, they may have a lot of foreign candidates who are not originally US workers, and they may know more about the US immigration than certain other industries. So look for all of those things. And just taking on like the first couple of questions, which I think are about how to answer the standard application. We've said this already, but Min is very right when he says don't give any kind of misleading impression, right? If you're being asked a direct question as to whether you will require sponsorship, the answer to that should be yes. If you do require sponsorship, and that lets the company know in advance whether they're looking to hire you for a short term, long term, or whether they should account for that sponsorship just in terms of pure dollar values, right? Because it is expensive to hire and sponsor a foreign worker, but give them that information upfront if they ask you. And if that makes if that makes them say no to you, well, as I said, it's better that you get to know that right now than 3 years into the process when you really need the sponsorship and suddenly the company says no. Does it mean that you have to go out of your way to let somebody know that you require sponsorship? Maybe not, because as I said, the first couple of years, fresh out of school, you are able to work for almost any employer without um, too many requirements from the employer. So use that time, but make sure during that time you definitely find an employer that is going to eventually sponsor you. Will disclosing the need for H-1B sponsorship impact one's job application? Perhaps. But again, I'd much rather that it impacts it right away, rather than down the line. So don't put it on your resume. Like I've seen a lot of resumes which say at the bottom, will require sponsorship. Maybe don't do that. At least, try and get your foot in the door, have that first meeting. Maybe your hiring manager or your immediate manager will ask you. If not, maybe, towards the end when you have an offer, they'll ask you. So maybe don't put it right at the bottom, and that probably gets your resume, not even taken in. But at some point in the conversation, closer to when you have the offer letter, have that clarity.
Right. And then, just to kind of piggyback off of that, and, I suppose this is for, the foreign national students. So, one maybe common misconception is that if someone has an EAD, basically EAD is short for Employment Authorization Document. So they have their I-765 form approved, whether it be based upon incidental to their F1 student studies, or perhaps they're the dependent of a principal applicant and they're eligible for the derivative beneficiary EAD, that's out there. So, one example is an H4 spouse, where the H1B, partner has a green card that's kind of further along in the queue. And then there's an H4 EAD option that might readily be available. So, a lot of it's fact specific. But one thing I do want to clear up is I know we've been kind of throwing out the word sponsorship out there. So sponsorship has a very, like direct meaning. I would venture to say that, if someone applies for an EAD by filling out the I-765 form and then, submitting it to the government, Homeland Security, and getting the EAD work authorization card approved, they don't, that's not sponsorship. They don't have to, when they're making their job application to a hiring employer, the expectation shouldn't be there that the hiring employer is going to be quote unquote sponsoring the continued renewal of their EAD work authorization. The worker, the student, can do that themselves. They're the ones who pay the fees. They're the ones, if the EAD is related to their academic studies, they're the ones who, correspond with their DSO at their International Students Office, at their school, in making sure that, that the CVIS record is correctly updated, and that there's no issues regarding any of those, those things involved with the continued OPT EAD employment. So, this is where the devil is really in the details. Know what sponsorship really means. Sponsorship, obviously, in the traditional context is, those are the work visas, the H-1B, the L-1. Depending upon the visa classification, something like, I don't know if you have any Canadians or Mexicans here in attendance, but for people who might be able to listen to this on demand, if that's their background, then depending upon the job at hand, there might not necessarily be a need for sponsorship. If someone kind of qualifies for the job that they want for themselves, if that's classified under a management consultant classification, there really doesn't need to be any kind of sponsoring employer, quote unquote, in order to kind of get that done. So, Yeah, as I said, the devil really is in the details involved for those foreign students. Don't think that just because I wasn't born here in the U.S., I came here based upon a visa classification such as an F1. No matter what, if I want to work, it's sponsorship. Depending upon your unique circumstance, that might not necessarily be the case for your situation, which might be able to perhaps kind of help you along in the interview and evaluation process. Yeah, just going to the questions here, I do want to kind of give them some time. I can try to answer the first two. I think they're somewhat related here from Pam's slide about responding to standard job application questions and how you as the applicant can effectively encourage an employer to hire you. Um, so um, so yeah, I mean, this is where we talked about kind of painting yourself in the best light possible. The phrase as trademarked by Mishita, being location agnostic, that always helps. And I think everyone here knows that when it comes to real world business, no matter what industry, businesses move fast. They need to pivot on a dime. If a certain engagement that they have with their customer base requires them to focus their attention more on this as opposed to this, then they expect their employees to pivot alongside with them, when it comes to executive management making that decision. So that's where location agnostic kind of comes into play, being flexible on the terms of your continued employment with that company. But also, in regards to flexibility from an immigration standpoint, what I can add is that depending upon the company and how sophisticated they are in terms of their immigration process, they might have very hardline rules in terms of when they decide to do something called premium processing, or when they do decide to perhaps sponsor someone for U.S. permanent residency. I know that I counsel plenty of clients where they say that the uh, the the new the new joiner, whoever's new to the company, they have to put in at least 2 years of good standing employment before any kind of conversation regarding a green card is started. Um, and that's just their internal company policy. Immigration rules don't preclude them, don't instruct them otherwise. It's just that that's something that they've developed over the years of operating within that specific industry, that's best for them. It shows that it gives them some time to evaluate whether this new joiner is a right fit within their overall culture, and whether he or she is making actual valuable contributions to where the company wants to go. So yeah, I just to kind of know those rules and be flexible and be willing to kind of work with that employer in making sure that you understand that that's how it's going to be, and perhaps maybe not pushing them otherwise. Because I mean, if you happen to join such a company where they have certain things in place, we're not going to premium process anything. As premium processing, for those who don't know, it's for some visa classification and benefit requests, there's a way to pay an additional fee in order to expedite the adjudication of the immigration benefit request. A lot of times, because processing at the government takes so long, there's a built-in advantage to upgrade something to premium processing if that option is available. Certain foreign nationals who are starting in their career, they want to premium process everything. And I'm not going to make light of that. It's obviously having that um, that I mean, I suppose having that plan and knowing that something is approved, it can help navigate and kind of structure your life goals as well as your family's goals here in the United States. But some employers are resistant to that. They unless there's a specific compelling business reason that says otherwise, they are not going to premium process. And for you as a foreign national worker working for that company to be comfortable with that. So I suppose that just being agile and flexible in whatever things that you expect from that company that you're starting with, and especially if you're looking to kind of get your foot in the door in joining that company, that's definitely going to help in the questioning interviewing process.
So Min, let me just ask a question then. So what is the average time, the time range in terms of processing the sponsorship? You mentioned there's an adjudication process that accelerates it, but what's the general time frame? And when I think about the investment of a couple of years for someone to work in a company on that work permit, and then the company certainly is wanting to know what value they contribute and how they perform in terms of whether they're going to invest in that sponsorship, because there's fees that the company pays. So what's the time frame generally? And I think it varies by country, right? The fee and the time frame. Can you comment on those?
Right. So in terms of being country specific and where someone originates from, I mean, there's some visa classification carve outs. I believe I mentioned the TN for Mexicans and Canadians, but for others as well, where if someone does not have citizenship for that country, from that country, then they're not eligible. So I suppose that's where the in the country and origin specific visa classifications kind of come into play. In terms of processing times, I suppose compared to this time last year, they've improved a lot, even for standard processing. So to Homeland Security's credit, they definitely try to invest resources in quickening these adjudications. But we're still talking about months as opposed to a few days. So like a standard H-1B, we're talking about perhaps maybe about 2 or 3 months. Not to say that it can't extend beyond that, but it's a far cry from how long those cases were taking, which were closer to 7 and 8, as recent as maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So, it does kind of depend and vary upon volume at Homeland Security and USCIS specifically. But to the government's credit, they have been working on those processing times, and they've publicly acknowledged that they're delayed in whether it be scheduling something called a biometrics appointment for certain benefits that require biometric submission, or just the adjudication on the papers of an H-1B or an L-1 or any kind of work permit application that a company might submit for a foreign national worker. But premium processing, since we're on that topic, right now it's about 2 weeks. The cost is it's a little over $2,800. But there is a possibility that premium processing is going to be 3 weeks. So I'm not going to go into anything that's not law right now. But there's some kind of changes in terms of the premium processing clock. But compared to 2 to 3 months, obviously 3 weeks is much shorter.
Yeah,
So
and these are not, there's no black and white here in terms of the right answer. It's just of curiosity and a general guidance, and that's really what this session is. So it's not specific legal advice. It's these are the guidelines, this is the experience, here's what we know from our best practices and from the things that you advise your corporate clients on. So again, this I want to stress the guidance part of this, and individual cases vary and circumstances vary. So that's where the direct advisement for your private services would come in for individuals. So I'm glad that there's just some general understanding here, and that's the intention for today. So okay, so
I think let me
ahead.
take up a couple of the questions on the on F1, because I'm also cognizant that we don't have a lot of time left, and I think some of these questions may be more relevant to the students who are on F1 status right now. I see about the grace period and the sponsorship and other visas that can be transferred to at the end of the OPT. So just as a very general guidance, and I know a lot of you may already know about this. You have up to 90 days of unemployment. You can accrue up to 90 days of unemployment when you are on your F1 OPT. And if you're eligible for the F1 STEM extension, you have a total of 150 days of unemployment that's allowed. Does this grace period get added or saved at the time of the extension? Not really. So if let's say you were not unemployed at all during your OPT, you've saved up all of your 90 days, so to speak. It's not that it's going to get added. You would still have a total of 150 days. So throughout your 3 years, the maximum number of days that you could be unemployed on F1 would be still 150 days. And what visa status can you transfer at the end of OPT? That's a whole presentation. There's like an alphabet soup of visa options that are that one could consider. Let me just lead off by saying that I think one thing I tell a lot of graduates when I speak to them is be your own advocate. Really do a lot of research on some of them. And I don't mean that, you have to become an attorney, but what I'm trying to say is that going back to some of the employers who may not really know that there are visa options available, right? Because the news generally only talks about H-1B and, people might think, okay, it's either this or nothing else. So just do a little bit of research. And if you find an employer that otherwise is amenable to working with you toward the immigration options, maybe you could say, hey, in addition to H-1B, there are possibly some other visa categories that you could look at, right, in terms of employment authorization. As we briefly talked about, intra-company transfers, where you work for a particular company abroad for a certain period of time, and then that company can bring you back to the United States as an intra-company transfer. Maybe the industry that you work for or the organization that you work for could be eligible to file cap-exempt H-1Bs, which is, a specific kind of H-1B for employers that are either, in a university setting. So maybe if you have been working with a professor, right, for a long time, check with them, hey, does the university do cap-exempt H-1Bs? If I continue to work for you in your lab, in your project, in your research, is there any possibility that the university could do a cap-exempt H-1B? This is available all year round, and it is not specific to the lottery, the cap lottery. And it could be one of the options. Again, it may not be available to every industry or to every university, but consider that. You could, if you have your 3 years of employment authorization here, and particularly if you were a master's student or a PhD student, then consider what your profile is. If you're someone who's extraordinary in their field of endeavor, someone who's done really well, has probably been on like an academic path, right? This is someone who's published a lot of papers, has been invited to speak at conferences. Consider whether you could qualify for O1 visa. Consider whether there could be any other visa category, as Min said. If you have another nationality, right? In addition to, let's say, being South Korean, maybe you also hold a Singaporean nationality, right? See if you qualify for any other visa category because of your country of origin or nationality. So be your own advocate and do some of this research so that when you're speaking to employers, you can then present some options, right? And then say, hey, this is the information I have available, and I'm happy to, put you in touch with seasoned immigration attorneys who could then maybe take this forward in case you don't have like an immigration program for the company directly, and then bring those and then tie this again back to the skills that you have. And I'll take one last stab at the question about how to say whether you want to continue to work in the US for a longer period of time and not go back to India. Well, I don't know. I think, if this is being asked at the initial part of the interview to kind of figure whether you will require long-term sponsorship, I think you could kind of, sidestep that question by answering it and not really answering, to say that, look, I've just completed my master's or my PhD or, whatever your degree is. And I had come to, hone my skills in this particular area, right, in an academic setting. And now that I am armed with this degree and I have completed my master's or my PhD, I would like to see what is the real life, application of the knowledge that I have gained. And I think that doing that in this country or, in this setting would be very valuable. I will see how how my work in the United States goes. And if I feel that it is relevant in the United States, I would like to continue it, I'd like to continue staying here, but if I find that the relevance of my work is more urgent or more important in my home country, I would then consider moving there. What I'm trying to say is that make your answer more centered around your career rather than the place that you want to live in or the country that you want to live in. That gives it a more, nuanced and polished answer, and it shows that you are putting your career more front and center, right? Rather than just simply saying, oh, because I think the thought process that goes behind answering this question is, if I say I want to live in the United States long term, and then what if they don't sponsor my H-1B? Will they think that I cannot work for them? Or if I tell them, oh, I want to go back to India, and if they are looking for a long-term candidate, will they not hire me? So don't worry about that at the outset. Try and answer it, within the lens and the context of your career.
Wonderful. And so I want to also add that many employers are now upfront about asking the question on the application about, do you require sponsorship and do you have a work visa? So I think employers are really being upfront about their selection as a filter for those that they interview. And then some actually will say, we do sponsor. Think that's the good news, is companies are starting to see the value of the talented international professionals that we have. So I recognize we've got 5 minutes left. Let me open it up for the students. And then I'll make a minute or two for any closing remarks from Min and Mishita. And then I'll go to the slide for Francesca's contact information as I'll make closing remarks for today. So I know our time has gone by quickly. Let me offer it to the students. Are there any questions here on this list that haven't been answered that you really would like guidance for? Or do you have an additional question that's not here that you'd like the attorney's attention on? Let me open the floor for the students to ask. Okay, don't be shy. My goodness. You have these attorneys at your fingertips. You have no idea.
You did a good job in presenting. If other questions have
I have a question.
Yeah, this is a gift. Please take the opportunity. Mahir, go ahead.
Okay. So to know more about the H-1B process and about sponsorship, which resources we should be actively looking for when we apply for this role? Which resources we should use? Are there any websites or YouTube channels which you would suggest?
I'm sorry, like the nature of it is looking for H-1B employers, like a career website, or just was it something?
Just about process, to know about the whole process.
Oh, the process for an H-1B. Mishita, do you want to?
Yeah, I think the first really, the biggest resource that you should probably use should be your university's DSO. A lot of them are very knowledgeable, and, they can point you in the right direction, right? If you really want to get into the nitty-gritties of how does the H-1B process work, what does it mean to get registered, selected, so on and so forth, I think it would be a very good use of your time to maybe book a consultation with an immigration attorney, just purely from, I would like to understand how this goes, because I've seen a lot of times, of the internet, it's usually like TikTok, right? You have 30 seconds of a sound bite, and they may either not be able to explain the entirety, or you may take away like a very condensed version of information. So definitely steer clear of that. Another great resource that I would recommend is your cohort. Other students, either maybe your alumni or your fellow students in the cohort who are probably in a similar situation as you, right? And who also perhaps require sponsorship, or who have previously required H-1B sponsorship and now are working for different companies, reach out to them, say, hey, would you mind? I'd like to buy you a cup of coffee and, just understand how you went through this entire process. Someone who's gone through the process more recently may also be like, they might be able to give you more relevant information. Reach out to certain maybe like hiring managers, where if you look in your LinkedIn, right, you might see, hey, I see this person is a hiring manager in this company, and I also see that they were an alumni of Stevens, right? And that is another connection that you could make. You could also reach out to various student affinity groups within your university. I know that there are certain affinity groups that will host these seminars which help students understand, their various visa options. One place I would definitely not recommend is just, Googling something off randomly on the internet. If you really have to look at what are the rules and regulations, you can certainly look up at the USCIS website. I think, that should at least point you in the right direction, but maybe sit with someone who's gone through this process, because it could be just a little bit more nuanced. But yeah, certainly not one of those TikTok immigration attorneys who will say, hey, I'll get you the green card in the next 5 minutes. Please, please don't hire me. I'm not making this plug for myself, but I really want to say, don't listen to a lot of those, because the long-term implications of getting your visa status or immigration status in jeopardy is just, it's not worth the short-term gain. Min can elaborate more on this, I think, but we've seen enough situations where people like, oh, I just wanted to stay a little bit longer, and I contracted with maybe an agency or someone who said they'll get this done very quickly, and now I'm stuck because either I have like a 5-year ban or 10-year ban. You don't want to go down that road.
Well, that sounds like there's some scammers out there, Mishita.
Yes.
And what you referred to around Stevens does have an office. It's the International Student and Scholar Services Office. The ISSS is what they're called, are the support mechanism for the processing and, to have additional guidance from the university itself. So this is like been amazing, and I know we're at time already, and so I want to open it up. Is there any closing remarks? And then I can go to the final slides, and I know that we're at time, so you've been so gracious and amazing, Min and Mishita. We're grateful to have you. Let me make sure that you've covered anything you want to cover, or shall I move to the final slides?
I mean, if there's no questions, I mean, perhaps we can. We don't mind sticking around a few extra minutes if Mihir and Tanvi might have additional questions. But just to kind of add to what Mishita was saying, it's helpful to know that as foreign nationals, like the decisions you make, like they're gonna be with you like your entire stay here in the United States. I think that's what Mishita was talking about, in terms of perhaps making cautious and measured decisions instead of just kind of jumping at the first opportunity that some random TikTok agency might offer. If an offer seems to be too good to be true, it probably is. Immigration takes a long time, especially for certain individuals who might derive from India, China. It's widely known that those two countries and nationals from those two, regions, they're the most retrogressed in terms of if someone wants to make the United States their permanent residence. Unfortunately, there's artificial built-in limitations that might kind of delay that for many years. So kind of um, knowing that it's not as quick as I enroll in an institution like Stevens, I get my F1, I start working on my OPT, I get extended because I have a STEM degree for another 24 months, then I get sponsored for an H1B cap or some other sponsorship through whatever other work visa classification, and then I work for a couple of years and I apply for my green card, and then I apply for my citizenship 5 years after that. for some, that might very well be the case, but I do consider that to be a minority. So knowing that you're going to be here in the United States, either studying or working for a prolonged period of time, it's always best to do everything within your power and your control to make sure that your status is maintained. That you're not doing anything in terms of, and not to say that I'm not implying that anyone here would ever consider this, but even unknowingly, you think that something sounds okay, and that you're willing to engage, whatever requesting agency or organization or quote unquote employer, um, and because you have no other option, you're like, okay, let me do this for a few months. Well, if it turns out after the fact that whatever investigating agency at Homeland Security finds that conduct to be unlawful, then that's going to stick with you, and then that's going to inhibit you from adjusting status to become a U.S. permanent resident. That's not going to go away. So like know from an immigration standpoint. Um, and unfortunately, there are unscrupulous employers out there. They form sham companies. Organizers form sham universities, and they know that the foreign national population here in the United States, for all intents and purposes, is a marginalized population. They don't really have that many options. They want to remain in the U.S. They know that that's the goal for them, but depending upon their country of citizenship and where they're coming from and the specific field of expertise that they have, it might be somewhat limited in terms of available options, and they kind of prey on those folks. So just be careful. If that's all that you're hearing, and it doesn't sound to be very kosher, it might well be wise just to kind of step out of the U.S. and maybe just kind of revisit everything from a U.S. immigration standpoint from outside the U.S., because you cannot be here in the U.S. if your F1 course of study has expired and your OPT employment has also concluded. So this is where constant communication with the International Students Office that Pam referenced, that's key. Any kind, if you're a student, even after graduating, your class, and you're engaging in post completion OPT and a STEM extension if eligible for an E-Verify employer, you have to let your DSO know. You have to let them know. Have the DSO be your best friend and always be constantly in communication with the DSO, because even if it's like even if it's unintentional, when it comes to something like a change and it just kind of slipped your mind and there was no malice behind you not letting your DSO know that, if the DSO is the one who controls your obviously your service record, and they're the ones updating your I-20, if there is no update there, then it's hard to make sure that the paper trail documenting your immigration history is up to date. And then many years on the road, when you do find your dream employer and they want to sponsor your green card, they want to sponsor your work visa, that immigration history is going to come to light, and they'll be like, oh, this is a little fishy. Like, what happened here? I thought you were working for your OPT employer for that required duration. Now you're telling me that you're unemployed. Well, that's a maintenance of status issue, and then then that puts the brakes on whatever interview process that you might be engaging in with that prospective employer down the road who wants to sponsor your work visa, who is a legitimate company. And they might say, oh, we're not going to sign up for this. And they might just reject your candidacy at that point. So like know that the decisions you make now, they're going to come to fruition, and they're going to be absolutely applicable many years down the road. So do tread cautiously always. And if you're unsure, then whether it be our law firm or any whether it be a colleague in the industry who went through the immigration process themselves or another attorney whom you trust, always seek counsel.
There's a lot of integrity and ethics the way you've described the process, and the guardrails for what could be a misstep. There could be a major career and life-changing moment. To get the right information is critical here. This has been so informative. Let me open the floor. Any last comments or questions from the students? Okay, Mishita, do you have any thoughts, or shall I move to close?
No, I just wanted to say thank you once again for inviting us. Hopefully this was informative. And I understand sometimes when things are getting recorded that people may not be able to comfortably ask questions, which is why I know Pam will put Francesca's information here. So should any of you need any further follow-up, feel free to reach out to Francesca, who's she heads our marketing, and she will be able to relay your questions to the right person within the firm. I also wish all of you, who are looking for their internships and are coming up on your interviews, the very best of luck. I hope the rest of your immigration journey and your time in the United States is smooth and absolutely comfortable. So good luck.
Min, anything from you to close?
I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. So, I'm not going to, try to make it as well spoken as Mishita just kind of put down right there. But yeah, just to kind of echo, her sentiments. Like it's an exciting time, I'm sure, for the audience. As you kind of complete your programming at Stevens. Just to just to be reminded that that even though things might, I mean, I'm not going to underestimate the fact that it's a hard market out there. A lot of times employers have their choice in terms of whatever applicant they want to bring on board, and even though federal law does compel them that country of origin and nationality should not be a factor. I mean, obviously from a real world standpoint, maybe sometimes it is. And, because there are direct costs in terms of immigration sponsorship. So, but don't let that dissuade you. There are plenty of companies that Mishita and we represent. They let me know all the time that their job market is barren in terms of the type of person that they're looking to bring on board. They as part of a green card, let's say they're sponsoring for a current employee, they have to kind of go through a labor certification process, and they're like, even if you didn't have to do this is what we'll do. We'll spend the money to look for the type of person to kind of step in and work with our U.S. worker staff as well as our foreign national worker staff in kind of getting whatever projects and whatever things that they want to get done off the ground. So yeah, I mean, it's it's a hard market, but if you do kind of look around and depending upon whatever niche field that you might be engaging in, there are opportunities out there. And even though the U.S. immigration, especially from a business standpoint, the U.S. immigration rule is more like a maze and it's hard to navigate, that there are resources out there as long as you're careful and not just not accepting any kind of answer out there. As long as you're careful and you pause and you're like, does this actually make sense? There are resources out there to perhaps help in that decision making for you.
Thank you so much, Mishita. You're extraordinarily knowledgeable, experienced, and gracious with your time. We are deeply thankful and have great appreciation for the commitment to the students and to make sure that their immigration path is and their journey to be in this country with you as guiding lights in their careers are illuminated by the decisions and information that they can make in the future, given the guidance today. What I'm going to do is make sure Francesca's information goes out to our cohort as well as the recording. So I want to stop sharing, and my goodness, thank you for getting our weekend off to a great start. We're going to wish everyone a great rest of your workday, and so gracious again. Thank you so much, and we're appreciative to your expertise to be with us today. So I'll say thank you, and Stop recording.